Form tools are quite convenient within the SOLIDWORKS sheet metal interface. They can be simply dragged and dropped from the design library. But before I get into the form tools, I'll talk a little bit about setting up the file locations. So first and foremost, if you don't have this design library option available in the design library tab, then you have to make a quick change to the file locations in the options. And this will be in design library, and you'll want to go ahead and add this folder. If you're using an earlier version, for example SOLIDWORKS 2011, you'll just look for the 2011 folder. Once you have that added in, this should show up on the side, and there should be a folder for forming tools. By default, a lot of the time this forming tools folder option is unchecked. So if I come into one of these folders with the unchecked option and try to drag in a form tool, this is going to ask me if I'm trying to make a derived part, as it thinks I'm just trying to drag in a new part into this sheet metal part. On the flip side, if we have this set as a forming tools folder, and this is just asking us if we want to apply this to all these subfolders, which we do, then we'll be able to come in and drag in a form tool. So you can work with both the form tools that are present by default in the forming tool library, or you can create your own as well as modifying these stock ones. So the first option here is a placement plane, and for this you have to choose a flat face. As you can see, if I click on the rounded face here, it asks me to select a planar face or a reference plane. This rotation angle has to do with the orientation of the form tool. So if I flip this 90, it's going to turn the entire tool 90 degrees. I can also move the position, and you'll notice if you move the position tab or go to the position tab, this will bring you into the point tool, and just like the whole wizard, you can add multiple form tools at once. And this is a new option to 2012. Also, the ability to edit these options are all new to 2012. So if I take a quick look at SOLIDWORKS 2011, you'll see when I drag in a form tool that it's just going to give me a positioning sketch with the profile, and once I'm done it'll simply add it in with no option to change any of those various options. Coming back into the arc length options, I also have this new option of flipping the tool to the other side, and it'll find the face at the bottom. We can also choose a different configuration if we have one. And there's this option to link to the form tool. So if this is a form tool that you change frequently, but you want these to remain the same, you can uncheck this option. Or if you want this to update with the form tool, you can keep this option checked, and when you rebuild, this will rebuild to the new size. We can also replace the tool, so I can switch over to this bridge lance, for example, and maybe remove out a few instances so that these don't overlap. And we can also add a punch ID, which I'll show in a little bit, by coming into the design library. And there's different options for flat pattern visibility. So if I add this in and take a look at my flat pattern, you'll see that that form tool is already added to the flat. I can change that, and instead of using the default show punch, uncheck this, and this will show that the punch is going to be suppressed when we uncheck this. I can show just the center of the punch, or I can show the profile as well. And these profiles will show up in the drawing when you create that flat pattern. And within the drawing itself, you can also create punch tables, and that's also covered in the drawing section of SolidWise. For that punch ID option, we can come into the design library and open up the bridge lance, and then go into the properties, and choose punch ID, and we could change this or leave it at bridge lance. I'll go ahead and leave that. And now that punch ID is associated with this form tool, and that'll be updated in any punch tables that you create. Now if we update the bridge lance, in this case I'll go ahead and change the width. So let's make this 5 millimeters wide. I'll go ahead and save, switch over, and generally these should rebuild. If it doesn't, you can simply go edit the feature, and those should update on their own. I have a form tool in the custom folder that does have several configurations. So you can see that in the pull down you'll be able to choose out any of those configurations. And with form tools you can also create patterns. And you'll notice you can also overlap into the round here. And I can also drop a form tool down on the side as long as it's not overlapping. So if I drop this in on the edge, it'll create that form tool even if this geometry isn't necessarily all that useful for us. It'll still create the forming tool. Lastly, within a forming tool you can add another forming tool. So in this empty space I can come in and I can add another forming tool. So if I wanted to add this louver, for example, I can add it directly to that face on the forming tool. But those are the options for using the form tool. The next video will cover how to create your own form tools and update those.